high school history teacher emailed me out of nowhere after 10 years of silence, and the attachment he sent was dated 3 years before I was even born. Mr. Lopez was the kind of teacher everyone remembered fondly. He taught history at Westbrook High for over 20 years and had this way of making the past feel alive. I graduated in 2012 and honestly forgot about him until that email appeared in my inbox last October. The subject line just said, "I think you should have this." No greeting, no explanation, just an attachment. A scanned document dated 1986. I was born in 1989. The document was a police report from a town I'd never heard of called Millbrook. It mentioned a missing teenage girl named Heather Russo. I had no idea why Mr. Lopez would send this to me or what it had to do with anything. I almost deleted it thinking maybe his account got hacked, but something made me keep reading. The report mentioned that Heather was last seen getting into a vehicle after her shift at a local diner. The driver was described as a young man with sandy hair and glasses. The case went cold. Heather was never found. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would Mr. Lopez have a 30-year-old missing persons report? Why send it to me specifically? I started searching online for anything about Heather Russo. I found an old newspaper clipping with her photo. She had dark curly hair and a big smile. She was 17 when she vanished. The next morning, I tried emailing Mr. Lopez back, asking what this was about. The email bounced. His account had been deleted. Now I was really unsettled. I drove to Westbrook and stopped by the school hoping someone could tell me where Mr. Lopez lived now. The front office secretary remembered me and said he'd retired 2 years ago. She gave me his address without hesitation because small towns work like that. His house was this rundown place on the edge of town. When I knocked, a woman answered. She said she was his sister and that Mr. Lopez had passed away 6 weeks earlier. Cancer. She asked if I was one of his former students and I said yes. She invited me inside. The house smelled like dust and old books. She explained she'd been sorting through his belongings and mentioned finding boxes of strange things, journals, newspaper clippings, photos of girls she didn't recognize. My blood went cold when she said that. I asked if I could see them. She hesitated but eventually brought out 3 cardboard boxes from the basement. Inside were dozens of clippings about missing girls from different states spanning decades. There were journals too filled with dates and locations and descriptions that made my skin crawl. The earliest entries from 1986 explained everything. He wrote about feeling invisible his whole life, never noticed, never respected. He described how taking Heather made him feel powerful for the first time. She had rejected him at that diner weeks earlier when he tried to ask her out. She laughed at him in front of her coworkers. He wrote that making her disappear proved he mattered, that he could control whether someone existed or not. Each victim followed the same pattern. Girls who dismissed him, waitresses who ignored him, cashiers who were rude. He saw himself as punishing them for not seeing his worth. There were 7 names total. 7 girls who disappeared between 1986 and 2001. All from small towns. All forgotten by the national news. His final journal entry answered why he sent me that email. He wrote that the cancer diagnosis made him realize nobody would ever know what he accomplished. He spent his whole life being underestimated and he couldn't stand dying the same way. He chose me because I wrote an essay in his class about unsolved mysteries and how truth eventually surfaces. He wanted someone curious enough to dig but removed enough to not be suspected of involvement. I called the police that same day. They took everything. Investigators matched handwriting in the journals to Mr. Lopez. They found remains buried on property he'd inherited from his parents 40 miles outside of town. 3 of the 7 girls were recovered. The families finally got answers after all those years of wondering. His sister cried for 3 days straight after the news broke. She thought her brother was just a quiet, dedicated teacher who never married. Westbrook held a memorial for the victims last spring. Heather's younger brother spoke. He said knowing what happened after 37 years didn't bring her back, but it brought him peace. Mr. Lopez died thinking he'd finally be remembered for something significant. He was right. Every award was rescinded. Every photo removed. His name erased from the scholarship he helped establish. He wanted recognition for what he did. Now he's remembered as the monster who thought murder would make him matter and sent a confession because his ego couldn't handle dying anonymously.